Anyone else come in? Okay, so I'm going to go through the training for the airflow. I'm just loading the brochure. It goes in. We do it in 3 parts. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about GBT, which is the protocol. I know both of you have been on the course, so I'm not going to go massively into that because we're running a little bit behind schedule. But I'm going to talk a little bit about GBT, and then I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about powder, and what we would use the different powders for, and a little bit of the history of the powders. And then I'll finish by talking about the machine, how we set it up, how we use it, and what we do between patients at the end of the day. Okay, does that sound alright for everyone? Yeah. So we're just gonna, it might feel a bit rushed, but please feel free to stop me if there's anything that you feel you want me to go into a bit more. And I am probably going to be a little bit, I do repeat myself a little bit just to drill home some more of the more important points as well, okay? Just give you an idea, so we've got, obviously I know you two are the hygienists. Are there any other hygienists? You're a hygienist one, you haven't been on the course.
Yeah, but it was July 2018, so
okay, but you know a little bit anyway. Right, that's right.
The BDA meeting on Monday has been cancelled. Just wanted to show that.
Was the one on Monday?
Safeguarding 1.
Guns N' Roses.
Okay, so you're a hygienist. So there's 3 hygienists.
4.
4 here.
Okay, sorry. So you,
No.
Sorry.
It's us 4.
You 4 standing next to her. Okay, great. All right.
We're just missing Helena.
Okay, great. So what we've got here is GBT. Now, for anyone that wants to know more about this, we do run UK courses all around the country. Some are theory, so they're 4 hours, and some are hands-on, which are 8 hours long. So they're definitely worth going on. I know you guys will be on them, but if anyone else wants to know a little bit more, that's the best place to learn about this from in-house, from still practicing clinicians. Okay, I'm going to run through it in about 5-10 minutes compared to 4 hours, so I'm going to miss a lot of the details out. So if you do feel there is a bit more you need to know, definitely have a look at those courses. Okay. But again, if you've got any questions, then just shout. Now, GBT is essentially the protocol that we advise to follow, which gives you the best results for your patient, for you as clinicians, and also for the practice. Okay, we find that when we pair this with this machine, everything just seems to work a little bit more smoothly. The goals behind them are not particularly different from the goals that you currently would have in your traditional scale and polish hygiene appointment. Those being that we're looking to disrupt and remove all of the biofilm, we're looking to remove the calculus, and we're also looking to lift the staining. So a fairly standard goals in terms of the appointment. But what we are looking to do is achieve those things whilst being minimally invasive, increase the patient enjoyment, and also try to move that a little bit so you can see me better. Is that better? So you can increase the patient enjoyment, clinician enjoyment, and also we want to increase the practice turnover. Okay, so those 3 goals whilst achieving those things as well. And we find we do that best when we follow these steps. Few reasons for that. So step 1, which is assess, that's standard. That's whatever you're doing now. Okay, so that's fine. Won't go into that too much. Step 2, which is disclose. Now, disclose is a very important step in GBT. Okay, in the hygiene appointments, do you disclose at the moment?
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. So that's a fairly common answer. So sometimes, if not rarely, if at all. Now, the reason we want to disclose is it ties in very nicely to our other steps. Okay. The main reasons I get why people wouldn't disclose is normally time and maybe mess. Okay. Now we have got these nice little pre-soaked sponges, which should save you quite a bit of time. And so these have come out this year, and they're very popular. So they're pre-soaked sponges. You just take them out with the tweezers, apply them on, and then ask the patient to rinse, and you're good to go. It's 2-tone disclosing, so you've got your red, or it's more like pinky red for your new biofilm, which was within the last couple of days, and then you've got your blue, which is mature biofilm, so that'd be anything older than 3 days. Okay. Now, it's an important step because first and foremost, so we can see the biofilm. Now, it's not necessarily a case that we might be missing biofilm if we don't disclose, but what we may be doing, which is more common, is that we'll be cleaning areas 2 or 3 times more than we actually need to, because we're just making sure that we've definitely done that area. So we're not being as efficient, we're using more powder, and we're taking longer in the treatment because we're cleaning areas 2, 3 more times than we might need to. Whereas when we disclose, that gives us that clear where we've been, where we're going, and knowing that we've completed that area. Okay, so that's the first reason. The second is probably one of the most important, which is then step 3, which is motivate. So motivate / educate. Now in this step, we're obviously showing the patient the disclosing and where they may be going wrong in their at-home cleaning. And we still want to do all of that you're currently doing in terms of that oral health awareness and just making sure the patient's brushing techniques are right, what brush they're using, flossing, TPs, whatever it might be that you're currently advising them to do. But as well as that, especially for the first year, and especially with new patients, so the first time the patients are having this treatment, we really want to educate them on biofilm, and we really want to educate them on what we've, as a practice, invested in. So once they understand what biofilm is, and what biofilm can lead to if left, and what we've invested in as a practice to help them manage that biofilm with this and the powders, and once they've really understood the treatment they're about to have, it makes a huge difference in terms of the grow in the practice. Okay, so this is a huge, well, it makes a huge difference. One, for they do tend to then want to, the next time they come, they want to have less biofilm than they did before. That does help. So they do educate themselves. The education helps them motivate themselves at home a little bit more, especially with kids as well. That's a really, like my 2 kids had GBT for the first time last month, and they are, like my son, I used to like headlock him to brush his teeth, whereas now he's on it, so it does kind of motivate them. But it also, when you pair it with the treatment, and because the treatment's really nice, and we're going to come on to that later with the fine powder and the warm water, and it's going to be a completely different experience to what they may have had before. When you pair the nice treatment with the understanding of the treatment, that's when they'll talk. That's when they'll leave the practice, and that's when they'll talk to their family and friends about it. Okay, so that's what's really going to start opening up your inquiry book and starting to build the hygiene practice as well. Okay, so it's a really vital step. Disclosing is vital in growing the practice, paired with that understanding. Okay, so it's really hard to explain to them what a biofilm is when they can't see it. And I'm sure you guys find the same. I find that most people they've never even heard the term biofilm before.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice way to get that sort of moving around. Then obviously we're moving on to where we'd actually use the machine. So step 4 is airflow, step 5 is perio-flow if needed, and step 6 is Pizon. So the big change there is, rather than scale and polishing, we're polishing and then we're scaling. Now the reason we're doing that is because with the airflow with the plus powder, and I'll circle back around to plus powder later, this is the minimally invasive way, so it's the least abrasive way that we can professionally clean teeth in the hygiene room. So what we want to achieve is everything we can with that first. Okay, so with the plus powder and airflow, we can remove and disrupt the biofilm, we can remove soft calculus, young calculus, and we can also remove all of the staining. So out of our 3 goals, depending on the patient health, 2 1/4, 2 1/3, we're going to be able to achieve that just with airflow. And then we're going to move on to Pizon for that site-specific harder calculus deposits rather than the full mouth scale. And so again, it's less invasive, it's a nicer treatment for the patient as well. Now, disclosing obviously ties in there as well because we can see exactly what we've done. So then all we've then got to do with the scaler is just do site-specific calculus to removal. Now scalers have come a long way, from hand scaling to ultrasonic, and our ultrasonic scaler is a really good one. It's probably it is the least abrasive one on the market. But no matter how far we go with scaling, it will always be a vibrating metal tip. There is always going to be a changing of the surface of the tooth when we scale. So the less we do that, the better for the long-term health of the patient. So we want to try and achieve more with the plus, with the airflow. And what you'll probably find is that you start off and you'll be using the scaler more, and then hopefully as the patient keeps coming back in the right recall times, that we'll be doing more and more with the airflow than we will with the scaler. And disclosing then obviously ties into that. PerioFlow is for subgingival cleaning, so that's for pockets from 4mm up to 9mm. So we only need to use that obviously when needed. But I'm going to talk about PerioFlow more when we actually have the handpiece in our hands, because that's an easier way to explain that. So I will circle back around to PerioFlow. So then we would just use the P's on scaler, and again I'm going to explain the dynamics between the P on scaler when we have the tip and the handpiece in our hands. And then we'd move on to control, which is for this hand, and then again recall, which again ties in nicely to that. If we've explained to the patient about biofilm, and we can explain to them exactly how it works, and the fact that biofilm starts formulating in the mouth almost as they're in the car park after the treatment, and that's fine, it's perfectly normal. Biofilm starts to become a problem when we get layers of it on the tooth, and then that bottom layer of biofilm then becomes an antioxidant bacteria, and that's when it starts to then eat downwards, if you like, rather than being able to get oxygen from above. So that's what we explain that to the patient, and then we can say that's in 3 to 6 months' time, and that kind of then depends on the patient from when we would then recall them in terms of their health. Now with the plus powder, because it's a very fine powder, there is no minimum duration of time that we can use that. So if a patient wanted GBT every day, they could have it. Okay, so we don't have to worry about it being 4 months, but whereas with the classic powder, sodium bicarb, that is a minimum of 3 months before we would use that again. So that's the only thing we have to look at for. But plus powder, there's no minimum time, so we can just carry on using that as often as the patient wants. And you will find there are patients that will take to this almost like a haircut. You know, they will want it for every big event they've got coming up, so they may want it every 2 or 3 months, just because they've got a wedding or a party they want to go to, and they want to keep that kind of nice bright smile that they're getting from GBTs, and that's absolutely fine if that's what they want to do. And those ones are obviously very nice as well for business. So, is there any questions on that? Like I say, I'm rushing because I want to get it all in, but is that okay for you guys?
I just want to ask one question.
Yeah.
Because a patient comes back and he gets a lot of calculus, but not loads of, a lot of calculus, a lot of stain, but not a lot of plaque.
Yeah.
Maybe because it fluctuates. But would I then still just do the normal cleaning, or could I, with people with lots of calculus still,
Yeah.
would you still use the normal cleaning session, or would you still do GBT?
Yeah, so I'd still go on with GBT.
Yeah,
so,
would you?
So we still take care of biofilm, then we would then, if there is more, then obviously we'd choose to scale it for longer.
Okay.
But you'd still follow that same method. Yeah.
That's fine then, yeah, that's cool.
So powder-wise, so powders are obviously vital in airflow, and without the powders we've just got an expensive bit of kit. So the powders are absolutely vital, and what we use them for and when we use them is key to making this whole thing a success. Now EMS invests huge amounts of resources into developing powders. We've always been at the forefront of the powder development, and we're the only company currently that has independent clinical studies on their powders, which can be found on our website as well. That's another thing. If anyone wants to just double check what I'm saying is correct, you can find that those studies on our website. They're easily found. They're all independent, so we haven't paid for them. So that can all be found there, and they are on the brochure as well. So if anyone does want more info about that, just ask me. I tend to not talk about studies because not everyone's as interested. So I tend to, if people are interested, you can just go and have a look. So the powders that we've got here we've got the classic powder. Now the classic powder was the first powder we ever brought out back in the early 80s, 82, 83. It's a sodium bicarb powder. It was brought out and still is a very good stain removal powder. Always has been, always will be. It's very good at that. Now when we first brought it out, it was 60 microns in size, and it's a very hard powder particle. And when we talk about abrasiveness in powder, there's a lot that goes into it, but two things I'm going to mention quite a lot today will be size and density of the powder, and that's kind of what the two main elements there. So this powder came out, as I say, 60 microns in size, hard powder, so it was good at stain removal, but because it's quite abrasive, we could only ever use it on enamel. We'd always use it at 45 degrees, and we'd always point it away from the soft tissue. And if anyone's worked with air polishing before of any kind, whether it's EMS or someone, you've probably used something similar to this. You've probably used sodium bicarb or calcium carbonate. Okay, so you've probably got one of those two powders if you've got that experience with powders. And you'll find that if you have used it, you clip the soft tissue or you clip your hands, it can be a little bit uncomfortable, and the patient as well then gets a bit of information. So we do it.
Just say again, what size is the powder on that one?
it used to be 60, it's now 40. So originally it was 60, and now it's called Classic Comfort because we've made it small to 40. And that's still the case today with this powder. So we would only ever use it 45-degree angle, only on enamel, and always pointed away from the soft tissue. Then we brought out, after the classic powder, about 15 years later, we brought out the glycine-based powder, which was a perio powder. Now, glycine-based powder, the perio powder, was 25 microns in size, and it was very soft. So because of that, it was very low abrasion. And for that reason, hence the name perio, we could use it subgingivally. And it worked very well subgingivally, cleaning the pockets. The reason we didn't use it everywhere, and it was sort of marketed as a perio powder, was because it's so low abrasion, it was not very good at removing stain. So people would use the two powders hand in hand, and that's how the industry worked for 10, 15 years and still do today in some practices and also with our competitors. You'd have the sodium bicarb for your supra, and you'd have your perio powder, your glycine for your subgingival, and you'd swap those powders in and out as the patient came through. But then we brought out the plus powder. So the plus powder was what's really changed everything. That's why there's been quite a lot of noise about GBT, a lot of noise about EMS and airflow at the moment. It's because of this plus powder. So this plus powder came out about 6 years ago now, about 4 years in the UK market. And this powder is 14 microns in size. It's made from erythritol. It's 14 microns in size, so it's a very small powder. And because it's so small, we were able to slightly increase the density of it, meaning that it's still less abrasive than our previous perio powder, but it's nearly as good as removing stain as the classic. Now obviously the reason it's nearly is the reason why we still got classic here. So we want to be using the plus powder about 90% of the time, if not more. What you might find when you first start is that you might be using sort of 70-80% because if your patient's coming in with real heavy staining, they may not have had stain removal, and that you might be using a little bit more, you're getting used to techniques and things like that. But over sort of 6-7 months, you want to be at that kind of 90%, 95% plus powder. Now, plus powder, as I said before, is made of erythritol. So this is the same family as xylitol. And for those of you, xylitol is in a lot of mouthwashes and chewing gums and things like that. And xylitol is known to disrupt biofilm. There's an antibacterial chemical reaction that removes biofilm from the mouth when xylitol is introduced. Now they found this out, the way we sort of found our way to erythritol is that xylitol was found to be good for dental health, good for removing biofilm after, I find this story quite interesting, I don't know if other people do, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So after World War II, when there was rationings on sugar, Scandinavian countries used xylitol as their sugar replacement. That was what they used. And when they found this generation grew up of kids, they had better dental health. And what they found was that it wasn't just the reduction of sugar that obviously had a neutral effect. They were finding that their replacement, xylitol, was having a positive effect. And that's when xylitol started to be introduced into the dental markets for removing biofilm, for increasing that kind of health. Now, the problem with xylitol is, the reason why it's not a xylitol powder or a erythritol powder, is that if you consume large quantities of xylitol, and it does have to be a lot, it will upset your stomach. So generally everything with xylitol will get spat back out. Erythritol we can consume it, we can digest it, so it doesn't have any negative impacts on our digestive system. So that's why we use erythritol, but it works in exactly the same way. So we have two ways that it works. So when we introduce it to the mouth, we still want to use it at a 45-degree angle. Okay? The reason we want to use it at a 45-degree angle is because we need the kinetic energy of the powder particles hitting the surface of the tooth and bouncing away. That's what will disrupt the biofilm, and that's what, more importantly, will lift the staining. Once that happens, there's then the antibacterial chemical reaction sets in place, which then will remove the biofilm from the mouth and prohibit it very short term, and I'm talking an hour, from it growing back. Okay? And for that reason, actually I'll come on to that later, so that's how that works. Okay? Now, the good thing about it is, with the sodium bicarb, we'd always use it at a 45-degree angle. One, because we want that kinetic energy, and two, because if we were to put it at 90 degrees angle onto the enamel, you'd be causing a lot of damage to the enamel, almost blowing a hole through it. So that's one of the reasons why we never did that. With the plus powder, If we were to use it at 90-degree angle on the enamel, it wouldn't cause any damage. You'd just be wasting powder. So the worst thing you can do with this is waste powder. So it means that we can play around with those angles when we have got those difficult stainings to play around, because staining is all about angles. So the biofilm will come away nice and easy at 45-degree angle. On those stubborn stainings, it might be that you need a 60-degree angle or a 30-degree angle, and then the stain all of a sudden comes away. So we can play around with that. And obviously, because it is so low abrasion, we can use that subfluor and subgingival, but that also means that we can point it towards the gum line when we're doing the stone removal, and we can also clean the gum line, we can clean the tongue, we can clean the palate. Okay. Now, again, because of this, let me put that back in now. Because of this, it's opened up what we're able to use the powders for. So, this little chart's quite a nice way of showing it, so let me get that up. So, with the sodium bicarb, as we've said, enamel and only on stains. With the plus powder, we can use it on enamel white spots, we can use it on exposed dentine. One point I'll just pause there and say, on exposed dentine, don't play around with the angle too much. You don't want to use it at 90 degrees on exposed dentine. So keep that angulation there. Just be a little bit more careful with your angles on exposed dentine. You don't have to waste so much on enamel. We can use it on the gum, we can use it on the tongue and the palate spoke. We can use it on composites, we can use it on glass ionomers, we can use it on implants, we can use it on orthodontic brackets. There's nowhere really we can't use it. Okay? Now, implants is obviously a really big selling point of GBT, and a lot of people, and why Straumann are promoting this so heavily, is it's been found to be a very efficient way to clean out implants. Now, there's two with implants. Obviously, now it kind of implant patients are a great way to start with this, because generally, if you're placing implants and offering an implant guarantee, do you do that? Do you offer guarantees here on your implants? No. Okay, that's fine. So one of the things that you can do anyway, though, is you can advise your implant patients to be having GBT, especially every sort of 6 months, and that generally that kind of that market are happy to have that. And we know that it's the most efficient way to remove biofilm from the implant. Now, whether the arguments of whether you scratch the surface of the implant or don't, and depending on that kind of stuff, that, you know, I know that depends on everyone you speak to will have a different opinion on that, whether it matters whether you scratch it, it's already a rough surface, it's already a breeding ground for biofilm anyway, or whether you're making it worse if you do scratch it. I'm not going to get in, you know, that's an argument that others have. But with the plus powder, it doesn't scratch the surface of the implant, but we know that it is more efficient anyway than any other cleaning method that would. So we know we're sort of ticking 2 boxes there. Okay, so it's a really nice way. If the implant's on show, we can use the subgingival, the airflow handpiece for that, and then anything in the deep pockets for the perioflow, we can use that around the implants as well. Okay, and I'll come back around to that anyway. 2 contraindications that I just want to talk about quickly whilst we're on the subject of plus powder. There is a very small amount of chlorhexidine in plus powder, so it's 0.3% in the bottle, 0.004% when we're in application. The reason there's chlorhexidine in here is because it's just there to preserve the shelf life, so everything else is, so erythritol made from fermented tree bark and things, so it's a very natural product. It's gluten-free, vegan friendly, and all that kind of stuff people ask, but it's a very natural product, so if you open without the chlorhex, it would go out of date in about a week. So the chlorhex is there just to preserve shelf life, and it is a very small amount. But if you do have a known chlorhex allergy, then you would just go back to traditional methods, or just order a bottle of perio powder and have that in the cupboard for any of those known patients that you might have. It's not a big thing. I think it's 1 in 200,000 will have a chlorhex allergy. At the moment, in this current time, and the powder's been out quite a long time, I don't believe I think we are still in the case where we have not had any unknown allergy reactions. So it's not a huge thing to be worried about. Obviously, if someone declares it, then we wouldn't use it. That's only in this powder. The second thing we need to think about is asthmatics. Okay, so with my EMS manufacturing hat on our raw material, we do say not to use it on asthmatics. But if I take my EMS hat off for a minute, pretend I'm not being filmed, but I know my STA trainers say this as well, that really is clinician judgment. The plus powder is very soluble, So well, you see it when we use it. It's a very soluble powder, and we know that even if it is inhaled, it will dissolve in the lungs, and we've got the studies to show that. So it shouldn't be a huge risk. So it is that clinician judgment that obviously someone that's got asthma, if it's well managed, no attacks, things like that, you're going to be absolutely fine. But if someone's coming in with visible breathing problems and we can see that there's something going on, then we probably would just go for traditional scan and polish. And so that's kind of up to you guys to make those decisions as you go. But if you need advice on that, definitely you can message our STA trainers, they're always happy to help. Or on the GBT user group, you can ask on there and other clinicians will give you their advice on that kind of stuff. So that's the only two things there that I really want to talk about on that. Now, any questions on powders whilst I'm here? So, any questions? So the classic powder you can get in different flavours as well, just whilst I'm honest. This one's obviously lemon, but there are people with citric allergies out there, so you can get mint or cherry and things like that, but that's a lemon powder. The plus powder is naturally sweet, so there's no added flavour to that. Again, it makes it much nicer, because the lemon powder's okay, but it's just lemon flavoured salt, which is still not particularly pleasant. It's better than salt, but it's not great either. So the plus powder again is much nicer. So is that okay? So everyone sort of get what we're using the powders for and when. Great. So the machine itself is actually a really simple machine to use. It's really well designed, it's really easy to maintain, nice and simple to set up, so we don't have to panic too much. The main things that I wanted to just say is that I'm going to repeat myself quite a bit about moisture and powder, okay, because that's when these things block. Now we have introduced methods to stop that happening, but we do need to just keep our eye on a couple of things to make sure those methods are working. So that's where I repeat myself quite a lot, and it gets a bit like, yeah, all right, Harry, we get it, don't get the powder wet. But I just want to drill that out. If there's one thing that I can say today, it's to keep that powder dry. If you follow those methods, you'll be okay. Now, set the machine up. All we need is the power and the air. Okay. This is an air connection. Obviously that plugs into air. If you do have water connections in your chairs or in the room, or you do have them in the future, it's really important that this never gets plugged into a water connection. That is a big no-no, that will be a big repair bill. So that's one of the most important things, that if you haven't already got them, great. If you do get water connections added for any other products that you may buy in the future, my advice would be to get a different connection so you can't plug this into water. Okay, the amount of time, it happens way too often, no matter how often I say it, people do it and it's such a big repair bill, and it's heartbreaking, because it's normally someone, it's normally someone that hasn't bought the machine as well, and they feel terrible, and so it's really horrible when it happens. So if it does happen, make sure everything's labelled up and get a different water connection for anything you might use. So that's the first thing. So your air connection's down here in the back, and your plug, is this the plug that's plugging into up here? Great. So the air connection is really simple. So you've got your quick fit. So you've just got this lever, so you just pull that towards you, push it down, and then release the quick fit. And then to take it off is the same. So I'll just put that in there. So it's just down here. So you just pull that quick fit lever towards you, push it down, and then once it's in, you release the lever so it holds on, and then you're away. Okay. And then it just needs to plug in here. And that's it plugged in and working. First thing we need to do here is pair the foot pedal. So the foot pedal is a Bluetooth, and it works very well. We don't have any problems really with the Bluetooth foot pedal, which is good. But we do have, it is obviously powered by batteries, so they will run out. Now ideally, you only want to use Energizer lithium batteries in here. I'd recommend getting some rechargeable ones, they last a bit longer, and then obviously if you've got 4 rechargeable, or 8, you just keep it on rotation.
How long do they last usually? No.
They should last a few months.
Few months. Okay.
But the machine will beep at you, so it'll beep. Number 2 will beep up in orange, And when that beeps at you at number 2 in orange, it means they're about to run out. So it does give you a warning. So it should never just cut out halfway through a patient. It will give you a warning they're going to run out, change it before your next patient. But when it does run out of batteries, we have to repair it to the device. That's the only time we have to do that. And sometimes, actually I say that, sometimes you do have to do it. If you've been away, the machine's not been used for a week or something, sometimes you come in, the foot pedal's not working, it just needs to be repaired.
What about if you just change the battery and it's not said it's run out, or?
Yeah, so it will always, as soon as you take the batteries out, it needs repairing. So to do that, the bottom bit comes on a magnet, so that just pulls away. And then you've got 2 battery bits, and then here it says pairing 0, 5 and 10. So that means press 0, 5 and 10 at the same time. So all I do is I put my one battery in, my second one ready to go in, I then press 0, 5 and 10 on the machine. So 0, 5 and 10, and then it'll do this searching sound. At that point, I put my second battery in, put the back on it, click it, it will flash and then click at me, and it's paired. Okay, so it's just easy. 0, 5 and 10. You don't have to you're not like at the same time. You can just 0, 5 and 10, and then that's all working fine. That's all you have to worry about with the foot pedal. Next thing we need is water. So the water that we use is just your normal water that you would use in your chair. So you've got your Pison water tank, and that's for your Pison scaler. Simple. And that goes on the top. You've got your water, which is for your airflow, and that goes on the bottom. Okay? And they are only for that one. So if your airflow water runs out, and then you look and this one's full, that's why it won't start pulling from different tanks. Airflow bottom, Pison top. The Pison does have markings on it as well, measurement markings. That's if anyone wanted to use it for anything else. So if you say if you've got an endodontist and they're doing some endo work and they wanted to use a Pison scaler, maybe for irrigating the canal or anything like that, and you might want to use a different solution for that, you can then measure that out in the tank. So the Pison does have those options as well, and you can buy the tips for that as well. So it nicely needs to fill up. Lid just comes off. And these should last you a couple of patients. The airflow especially goes through quite a lot of water. The Pison will probably last you 4 or 5 patients at least, maybe even more than that, because we don't use huge amounts of water with the Pison. But the airflow, you are topping up it quite a bit with water, but there's not really anything we can do about that. So we just got to just.
I was going to say, yeah, we're used to that with you, Kate, aren't we?
Once we've got them ready to go, tighten that up, and then just plug on the bottom. One thing I'll say is that just push that in gently. I've had 2 of these come out the hinges last week because people are obviously just almost putting their weight down when they're putting it. It's just. I mean, that is solid, don't get me wrong, but if I put my weight on it, it's coming out, so just don't go too heavy-handed on that. And the Pison goes in there. You know your air's on because it will pressurise the water bottles, which is great. It's air pressurised, which means there's no pump. Pumps tend to break, water pumps and scalers, they always break. So that's great, there's no pumps in there, it's all air pressured. So that's another nice way to know your air's working.
Is it important to put the air in first, or can you?
No, you can do that, doesn't matter, that's fine. No, that's fine. Okay. Then we need our powder. So powder, for our mode advice here, we don't want to get it wet. So nice dry hands when we do it. And make sure you're not in a wet area near a sink or anything like that when we do that. So we've got our 2 powder capsules. We've got our red one which has plus on it and plus on the lid, which is obviously for plus, and then we've got our white one which is for classic and it says classic on it. They're nice and easy to fill up, but this is also really important. So these powder chambers, if they get wet, it's not as bad as plugging it into water, but it still can be bad. So just make sure this is always nice and dry. So my advice is dry hands, away from wet areas, and don't take the lid off until you have to. Okay? This does unscrew. That's for us, when we service it, we'll clean it all through for you from this. But you guys just worry about this lid, which just pops off and pushes on. Okay. So my advice is get your powder ready. Get your lid off your plus powder. Then take your lid off here. Keep everything nice and dry. Angle the powder chamber to the side. It doesn't matter if a bit does go down that central column. It doesn't really matter. It's not going to do any damage, but it just kind of wastes a bit of powder. So I just try and avoid it where I can. Pour it in the side. As you can see, it's really fine. So you have to give it a bit of a squeeze. And you want to fill it up to about the max line. Once that's topped up to the max line, put your chamber back on there. And once it's in there, that's sealed, that's fine. So there's no need to empty it at the end of the day or anything like that. The powder will last as long in there as it does on the bottle. Okay, so the sell by date is December 2021. That's good in there to December 2021. So we haven't got to empty it, we haven't got to clean it, anything like that. If for whatever reason you do want to clean it or it does get wet, then just empty the powder, clean it all through with wipes and things, and then make sure it's absolutely dry before you use it again. The 3-in-1 will be a good friend of yours with this, because you can use the air to dry it really nice, but always there's always moisture in your air line, so if you use your 3-in-1, go into the air first for about 5-6 seconds, let any moisture that is in there to come out, and then just dry your powder chamber. But only really do that if there's a need. You don't really need to clean these or anything like that, but if there is a need, then do it that way. Classic works exactly the same way. The only difference with the Classic is it's a bit easier because it's a much larger powder. So this just pours it out much easier. So you can already see the difference in the powders there in terms of the density.
Harry, sorry, the Perio powder's different, isn't it? So which one would that go in?
So if you were to use Perio powder, then
Yeah.
you would use it in the red plus one.
Right, okay.
So, once we've got our powders, got our chamber there, that just slides into there. And there's a little magnet that sort of takes it away from my fingers and just puts it into position there. And once that's in position, we just need to compress it. So we turn it, so there's only 2 buttons on this machine. The on button, which is on the top here, and then the compression button, which is directly above the powder chamber. And we just touch that once, and that compresses like that.
That's good.
Okay? Once that's all lit up like that, we're ready to go. So now all we need is our handpieces. Airflow handpiece goes on here. Now, as you can see, the airflow handpiece, for those of you that can see that, there's 2 chambers. There's one inside, inner chamber, and there's one outer chamber. The inner chamber, your water comes out there, and your air and powder comes out the outer chamber. One of the big blockages that we get is in this little bit here. And all that is this water getting back into the handpiece. So when we use the handpiece, just get into the habit of when you put it back in the holster, that it points downwards. Because then any water will drip onto the floor rather than back into here. So that's just a really nice easy tip that will save you blockages. If you're, to be honest, the handpiece getting blocked is far from the end of the world. It's a really easy fix. All you need to do is just put some vinegar down there. And you've got this little thing here called an easy clean. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later on. But this easy thing, so if you do get a little blockage here, all you do, the quicker you act with blockages, the easier it is to unblock. All you do, I'll just put that in there, little syringe of vinegar, straight through. The acidity in the vinegar breaks down the powders, then get your 3-in-1, blow some air through there, and you're good to go. If that doesn't work, I just put it in a little pot of vinegar, come back to it an hour later, do the same thing, and it's always fine. Okay, so don't worry too much about that, but you will have less problems if that's pointing downwards. So that just pushes on there. So then you've got your scaler and your wrench. So your tip just screws onto the scaler, and the wrench is one of those anti-torque wrenches, so you can't over tighten. So once it's tight, and then that just slides off. And this just pushes on, and you've got your 2 different bits where you've got your long bit and your long bit here, so you just roughly line them up, get it in and push it on. It's got an LED light on it. And again, then that just goes back into the thing. Alright? So that's it set up, so now we're ready to go. Okay? So I'm going to have to pause. I just need to lower them quickly. If that's all right. I think